Hey guys, welcome to another installment of Kellerman Vlogs. I'm actually recording this one in real time, thankfully. Some of the other ones, I read the book, wrote the notes, and then recorded way later. This one I just finished the book today, obviously not for the first time. Just got done writing my notes and came down here to film. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with this series of videos, I reread the murder mysteries by author Jonathan Kellerman. They are largely featuring the characters child psychologist Alex Delaware and LAPD detective Milo Sturgis. And they solve interesting crimes. And there's a few other main characters depending on the book. And I reread these books. They're not too heavy, they're not too light. They're perfect for me to just kind of have something to reread. And like many people who reread and rewatch and re-listen to the same stuff, I have strong feelings about it. And I have questions and things I want to talk about. So hopefully these videos reach somebody else who feels the same way I do, and we can have a conversation about these books. So, Rage. Again, these videos are meant for people who have read the books, and there will be spoilers. But if you haven't, here's a brief synopsis. So, child psychologist Alex Delaware consulted on a court case where two, I think technically teenagers, they were 12 or 13, right around the preteen teen crossover, murdered a 3-year-old. And his job was to evaluate whether or not they should be tried as children or adults. And he does the evaluation, and one of them gets murdered in jail pretty quickly. The other one gets out of jail. I don't remember exactly how long it was. Maybe 10 years later. No, less than 10 years. Maybe 8 years later. And seeks Alex out. Alex doesn't know why. He doesn't show up. Alex shows up for the meeting, but the kid who's now an adult doesn't show up for the meeting. Come to find out, he's now murdered. And trying to solve that murder just opens up a huge rat's nest. And that's the synopsis of the book. So let's talk about my notes. So, I do not enjoy this book. This is one of the Kellerman books that I enjoy the least. It's very dark. It's one of the darkest cases that Alex and Milo investigate. Alex says so as much in the book, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I really don't, and there's another name for it, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I don't really care for the of mice and men trope, where there's one small, evil, smart guy, and then a big, dumb, oaf. Man, there's a name for that pairing. I always just think about mice and men, but there's a name for that. And a lot of, you see it in cartoons, you see it in books, you see it in theater, you see it in movies. It's a very common trope. And I'm over it. I'm over it. We had of mice and men. That's all we need. We don't need any more. But that's definitely what this book is or was, because the two kids that murdered the little girl, one of them was small and smart and evil, and he was definitely the brains behind the murder. And then the other one was basically just there, and followed along because he didn't know what else to do. So, yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Alex / the author, Kellerman, mentions Milo achieving his rank by unearthing dark, ugly secrets about a former police chief, which would be John G. Broussard. And I've talked in the past about how I hate how they rebranded Broussard, because if you read that book, again, I said in the vlog for that book that I got no issue with Broussard. I like him. I don't love him, but he's a decent character to me. And in later books, they just refer to him as a corrupt police chief, and that's it. And this is the start of that twisting of the narrative. Because what ugly secrets? He wasn't the one that covered up the case. That was, he received a directive from his bosses to pull Milo and his partner off that case, and we talked about that in that vlog, and yeah, so that just bothered me. Dipsey Donut is a setting that features prominently in this book. I have a thing for old school donut shops, because my dad used to take me to Donut Delight when I was a kid. I think our Cub Scout troop maybe met there. It was half a mile from my parents' house. And it was when, my folks didn't eat out. We didn't go a lot of places, but I could, my dad would take me there. I think it had to do with Cub Scouts. And it was just one of those old, with a glass counter with the donuts in it, but you sit at the counter, you drink coffee, you eat your donuts. It's open 24 hours. It's cheap. It hasn't been cleaned in 100 years. It's dingy fluorescent lighting, and, I miss those places because they're all gone around here. None of them still exist. We have Dunkin Donuts, which is obviously a big chain, and they don't really have a sit down and eat thing. Definitely not a counter. Krispy Kreme, we don't even have them anymore. They went out of business. And the rest of our places around here are upscale bakeries like Lane. There's one Jewish bakery that makes really good donuts called, what's it called? Greenbush Bakery. And they were at the same location for a million years, but it was not a place you could sit. You just go in there and you look at the counter, and then their landlord forced them out. So I don't even know what happened to them. I know they're in a new location, but I'm sure it's not, old school. So anyhow, Dipsey Donut is that type of place, and it's in this book, and I was trying to figure out if it was a real place. I Googled it. It came up as I think in Tennessee or something like that. It did not come up in Southern California, so I'm guessing it's made up. Okay, on to the next note. Milo uses the N-word in this book, and it's super uncomfortable. He's using it to make a point. I get his point, but he, the character, should know better, and so should, Kellerman, the author. If you wouldn't say it in front of black strangers, then don't say it in front of anyone. Okay. The premise of Alex and Allison splitting in this book is super thin, and I'm guessing it's just a way to get Allison out so that Robin can come back, because everybody likes Robin. I don't think there's anybody that dislikes Robin. I think people are split on Allison. I know I don't dislike her, but I don't feel strongly about her, period. And I'm sure there's people that dislike her. But yeah, the premise is pretty thin. Allison is upset with him and claims him of being a deceptive, but he wasn't deceptive. All he did was omit that he was researching a specific set of foster parents. He said he was researching foster parents, but he didn't say specifically who. He didn't say that he was researching specifically one set. And I don't feel like that even rises to the level of a sin of omission. Like, that's not something you would say, And his reaction to Allison's outrage was wrong as well. He basically bought into her premise that he outright lied, and his excuse was, but it's such a dark case. It's so dark. Is my lens blurry? I'm not going to even bother doing an outtake. I'm just going to clean it right here because it looks like... Well, you guys tell me in the comments if that made a difference. Yeah, he bought into her premise that it was an outright lie, and it wasn't. He called the girl and said, I'm researching foster parents. She flipped out, and Allison's mad that he didn't say, that he was researching. I guess Allison's mad that he called her, period. But, so, how would he know that it was specifically Allison's patient? And you would think he would assume that if you're calling somebody, and he is assuming that these girls were abused in foster care, and you would think that if you're calling somebody that's been abused in foster care to talk about foster care, that they would, be fragile, but you'd also think they'd want to talk about it and get to the bottom of it. So, anyhow, getting back to my notes, because I kind of went off the rails there. Yeah. He bought into her premise that he outright lied and tried to defend it by saying it's such a dark case, but he didn't outright lie, and that defense doesn't mean anything. If he was making the mundane research query for educational purposes, the girl would have still reacted the exact same way because he didn't present any different information than he would have, So if we take what happened in the book at face value, then what it seems like is Allison just simply wasn't prepared for her patient to fall apart, and she took it out on Alex. Okay. Moving on, another donut place, Daffy Donuts. And I'm definitely assuming that's not a real place. I can't find anything on Google implying that it is. Moore Daney Andrewson does not sound like a real name, especially not the name that country preachers would give their kid. This book is yet another example where there are vigilantes, and Milo's like, I'm not going to solve all crimes, And, I get the premise of, I think in all the cases, I'm happy that the vigilante didn't get pursued and prosecuted because I agreed with the vigilante. although I'm not necessarily in favor of the death penalty, period. But it doesn't have the ring of truth that a police officer would just be like, eh. I mean, it does, because we know the police suck, but Milo's supposed to be one of the good ones. Okay. I'm not going down that rabbit hole, because that would take us a whole different direction about police dramas and, again, Law and Order and everything else like that, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and just, that juxtaposed with the defund the police, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but that'd be an interesting discussion another time. Crandall Wascombe seems like a bit of a caricature, but I still like him. That's my note. I'll expound on it a little. Is just like, where he seemed like not a real person to me was when the girls are freaking out and he's like, does anybody know any hymns? Does anybody know any psalms? I think even the most out of touch preacher would know that that's not going to fly in that moment. But he does seem to be very sincere and very kind-hearted, and I do like him. And I like that there are represented in the books religious people who are hypocrites and bigots and everything else, and religious people who are in it for the pure reasons, because I found both of those to be true in life. Okay, those are my only notes for that book. Next up is Gone, which I like, but it's a very different book than, like, we talk about the golden era of Kellerman in the 90s. Gone is nothing like that. We're clearly moved into a different era. And it's, if you juxtapose that next to the murder book, we're obviously talking about very different, times in the lives of these characters. So, okay. I hope that you've enjoyed these vlogs. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and thanks for watching.